Time to grow.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Grow Podcast. We're so glad you're tuning in.
Hey guys, this is Amu. He's my partner in crime. He provides leadership to the collective and he's part of everything that we do.
We got some hot stuff today that's brewing and cooking, and looking forward to jumping right in. Hey, man, so what's brewing with you?
Yeah, I'm reading this book called Leaders Eat Last.
Hey, guys, what's up? This is Josh, and I'm his Robin to his Batman. Just a pleasure and honor to be on this journey with him.
From Simon Sinek.
Mm-hmm. Simon Sinek, yeah.
So it's just interesting to think about all of this whole hype about leadership just boils down to a few fundamental things. And that fundamental thing is so human value driven, you know. So that's been interesting. That's what's been keeping me going this season.
So no MBAs required, huh?
No MBA is required.
Just empathy.
Just empathy and human value.
Nice. All right.
Yeah.
It's been interesting to see my boys grow. I mean, they're still young. Still, one is past toddler stage and one is still preschool. But it's interesting to see how they interact and how much they feed off of each other in terms of vibe.
Wow. Okay.
So that's been something interesting, and also to see how their personalities are very different, but how much they care for one another. But then when they're together, how much they also argue with each other.
Yeah.
And it's like this symbiotic relationship between, but I can see like the negative and positive pull and push factors. So that's been something interesting to behold. And I mean, you know, we all have personality, we all have character, but I'm seeing theirs form in front of my eyes, but also with each other and how they're interacting. And so that's been an exciting period to see, but also with some tough challenges and sometimes one hitting the other or something crazy happening. But yeah, just interesting as a father to go through that experience.
Much the same for me as well, right? Looking at how my son has been growing and, you know, the way that we are dealing with him. You know, interesting story, right, for today's context is the fact that, you know, recently we started a system which is a performance-driven system for Christian. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. You know, we started with this idea that, you know, we will reward good behavior and we will correct bad behavior. And so, you know, one of the things that's brewing in my mind is this idea that, okay, is this a good thing, right? Because constantly we are in this place where we are trying to earn grace when it's been given free. And is this developing a good behavior for Christian in terms of him learning to not perform to earn, but, you know, understand love and grace in its entirety, right? So it's been something on my mind. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's super interesting, and it brings me also to the topic that we'll be discussing another day, which is also culture, right? Like I think culture is all about performance being driven, you know, and it's about fitting into society or at least fitting into the values of society. So success are people that drive hard, you know, at whatever they do, that are passionate, etc. But at the same time, you have this performance-driven culture, and everyone is sort of hustling. I'm out here hustling. I'm out here doing this thing. But people are forgetting the process, and it's actually within the process of your journey towards something that you grow the most, right? And I can see that with kids, right? If you drive them hard on performance at home, they might understand that cleaning up the room will allow them to watch TV or whatever the reward is, exactly. But at the same time, they need to enjoy the process of also cleaning up the room, or at least the process of understanding, hey, when my room is clean, it creates clarity. I understand where my toys will be, etc. And I think, there's a fine line. As a parent, I think the balance is harder, but as an adult, we need to also be countercultural and
Of course.
and appreciate, even if it's not faith led. Like, let's say people that are not Christian in the workplace, wherever, to help people, also leaders and businesses, to help people and employees understand, hey, the process is just as important. In fact,
course.
the process is something that we can replicate, whereas the success might not be,
That's so true.
Yeah.
That I'm constantly trying to remind myself is that God is never amazed.
Oh, really? Okay.
God is never surprised.
All right. That's interesting. Yeah.
Even in my worst day, he's not surprised.
Yeah,
He's
that's
probably anticipating it because I led to it, right? It's almost funny, right? But I look at this, I think there's also a song that this band called Casting Crowns had written about this, about Psalm 1. It's called Slow Fade.
Slow fade.
It's called the slow fade, right?
Okay. Sounds like a dance.
Someone is like, walk in the path of the wicked, stand in the way of the sinner, and sit in the seat of the scoffer, right? So you see, it's like you're first walking past, then you're looking around, and then you're standing in their way, and then you're sitting with them, right? So it's a slow fade, he says, right? So I think we don't see the slow fade, but God sees the slow fade, and he understands that something is coming up, and he anticipates our failure. I think that's where we beat ourselves hard to the point where we say, you know what, I failed, I missed it. But he's anticipating and he's seeing that coming. And so he's not surprised. I think that's the first thing that I am trying to remind myself time and again about the fact that when I try to perform, I need to remember the fact that, I cannot earn by performance, but at the same time, in my weakest moment, God is not surprised.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, many ideas here and questions, right? One question I do have is, I mean, again, we talk about this in our discussions a lot. There's understanding the truth, knowing the truth, but somehow not applying it all the time. And one thing that I do see myself also at work, but also with my kids, is there is this performance reality, right? Like there is a reward that, I mean, it's easy to tell your kids, hey, clean up your room, then there's ice cream. They'll do it so quick. But it's also like that at work. I understand that when there is something, that there's a reward based on my performance, I perform better, right? Like I'll put more into it. If I notice, okay, no one is really gonna pay attention to this work, it might not motivate me in the morning. I still got to get the work done because it's my job, but there's this. So how do you find the balance to one, apply that with your fellowship with God, like just apply that truth to understand, hey, I don't have to perform because God sees me in my bad days and loves me just as much as on the good days. But then also in reality, in real life, how can we apply the truth of, wanting to perform without needing a reward? Maybe again, like that process-driven idea.
I think it starts with the idea of relationship. See, for example, we've been friends for quite some time now, right? And I know if for some reason, I'm stuck somewhere and I say, you know what, Amo, can you come and get me? You would come, right? Because you're not expecting, to get paid to pick me up from a troubled situation, or see, there's a certain relationship that leads to a place where you stop expecting rewards and you stop expecting something to come out of that relationship, because the relationship itself is the return in itself, right? I think that's the place that all of us should grow to, if I would say, to the point where God and his relationship, his presence, and the access to it itself becomes the reward for us, rather than, the blessings, or rather than the outcomes of a good, prosperous lifestyle, or abundance in in the world, all of those becomes the outcomes in itself. I think when we shift the focus from the true outcome to all these small little other outcomes, I think that's when we lose focus, right? In other words, it's making an idol out of itself in some form or the other. I think that, in my opinion, is what differentiates the idea of reward replaced by relationship. And when relationship takes over, reward becomes,
Well,
subsidiary.
when you say that, I think of the irony, because God is a good God,
Of
and
course he is.
and I believe that He wants good things for us. But then we somehow seek out these good things more than we seek Him out. You know,
Of course.
we seek out His peace more than we seek out His blessing, or we seek out His healing, whatever it is, more than we seek Him. And it's very interesting that you mentioned how being in a relationship that changes the game. Really fellowshipping and understanding, hey, just being in the presence of God and just being in fellowship with Him, that's the true essence
Of course.
of joy. That's the true essence of being, right?
Yeah.
Super interesting.
And one other thing that I noted down, which I think we should definitely touch upon, is this idea of guilt versus grace.
Yeah.
The idea that the Christian life is not going to be a cakewalk. It's not going to be mistake free. It's not even idiot proof to the point that you cannot make mistake, right? I think all of us in the right circumstances, given the right opportunity, we will mess up. And some of our falls could be worse than some others, because it's like the higher you rise, the greater you fall, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So that way, I think all of us are capable of it. But that being said, we should understand that God understands our failure, and He loves us anyway. Because of our failure, nothing changes. I think that's what led David to come back to this place. And I said, okay, I murdered, I coveted, I did all of that, but still, there's this joy of salvation which I'm missing out, which is far more precious than any of the other things that I've accomplished. So I want to come back to this place. So in being able to come back to that place, he said, then my heart will rejoice. So he really understood that, okay, the freedom and happiness, true joy, comes from this place of restoration as compared to enjoying the benefits of all of those things. I think that's the trip between, us leading toward feeling guilty to, accessing grace. So that guilt versus grace, point or anchor in our life, I think that's very important, I would say.
Yeah, I guess there's also this pressure. At least I have it, and I'm assuming maybe you do. And correct me if you don't,
course,
man. But this pressure of saying, "Did I blow it?"
Yeah.
Is this the mistake that blew away my purpose? Is this the one time that because of this I've blown it? But like the desire to serve God, or the desire to be a good parent or a husband, to just be like, oh man, I've blown it, right? And to understand that, and in the world, maybe in the world, especially with cancel culture these days, there's this concept of say something wrong, do that one thing wrong, and you're out of the game. You're not going to be invited to the Oscars, and that pressure of, oh my God, what I say today or what I've done, have I blown it? But then at the same time, being Christian and faith is so countercultural, so counterintuitive. We're almost programmed to think, hey, there's moments where we have to perform, right? Just like an athlete. Or I see it here in Switzerland with kids that want to go to gymnasium, the higher level of school, where they're like, oh man, I've blown it. And I always tell them, no, you have a chance there's other ways you can get into university at some point. It might be a longer route, but there's other qualities that you'll gain along the way. And then that brings me back to something else that I've been thinking about. I was reading about Moses yesterday, and it actually hit me. Like, all these people that we look up to in the Bible, including Paul, who every pastor would say is one of their heroes, just because he wrote the majority of the New Testament. They were actually big-time failures in terms of God's standard. I mean, Paul was seeking out Christians to kill them. Moses was a liar and a murderer, right? And the reason I'm thinking of Moses is, I always see leadership qualities in my eldest son. And at the same time, I'm like, you can be like Moses, but then yesterday when I was reading about him, I'm like, I'm not sure I want my son to be like that. But this idea of, you can be a true great leader for a nation and even a people with your fallacies, with the mistakes that you've made, because of God's grace and the way He looks at you and He can cover you.
I think it's definitely interesting, right? To look at it from the perspective that for God, even though all of them, the most faithful or the most affluent leaders that we see in the Bible, they've all come down to this place where they messed up, but then it's almost like, okay, start rebuild.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm just thinking from this point of view that God says, you know what, my mercies are new every morning.
Yeah.
So what that means for me, right, new morning, is that immaterial of what happened yesterday, tomorrow is a fresh chance. Sometimes I'm not even feeling like it because there's so much of conversations, bitterness, anger, all of these different things that you go to bed with. So you just go to bed and then, I'm just thinking in my mind, God, help me to have a better day tomorrow. Right? Because I don't think I can repair what has happened. I can only confess for what's happened, but tomorrow maybe I can try better. Help me try better.
That's good.
Right? So I think that's what it means to live in grace and not perform. It's accepting your mistakes and saying, you know what, I'm willing to start fresh. That's what it is.
Imagine if every day we lived knowing that His mercy is fresh.
Of course.
If every human being lived like that, wow.
Time to grow.
What are your thoughts on that? First of all, let me read a Bible verse. Easy, we went there, man.